Okay, class, this is Chapter 9, which is titled Reconstitution of Powders or Crystals into Liquid Medication. This is Lecture 3. As usual, the disclaimer is that you should have already read the chapter. You should have already reviewed the PowerPoint, and you also should have already read the lecture notes provided to you within Blackboard. So moving forward, I'm going to just do some practice problems with you guys. So if you can turn to page 306 within your book. On page 306, we are going to do a few of practice problems A. Alrighty, so let's look at number 1. So number 1, you have a label. Well, first off, the instructions for these practice problems is that they want you to calculate the powder volume using each of the labels that follows. Well, first off, just to summarize what we've learned in the other 2 lecture videos is that I want you to identify certain components to the labels, all right, when it comes to these powdered drugs. So first things first is that you have fluconazole oral suspension, and I'm going to just start pulling out the numbers. So it says we have 10 milligram per milliliter. Well, in detail, that is going to be considered our what? That is your dosage strength. Okay. The next thing it tells you is that for mixing directions to the left of the label, where it says mixing directions, it tells you to tap bottle lightly to loosen powder. Add 24 milliliters of distilled water. So 24 milliliters is going to be considered your what? Your diluent volume. So in parentheses, I'm going to put DV. You'll see why this is very important. Also, it says distilled water or purified water. So I'm going to put DW for distilled water or PW for purified water. In detail, that is the type of diluent you must add. All right. Above the name fluconazole, it says 35 milliliters when reconstituted. So 35 milliliters when reconstituted is considered your final volume. So I'm going to put FV. So if the instructions are for us to determine the powder volume for these problems, in order to calculate the powdered volume of a problem, I'm going to put PV, you need to remember this formula. Your formula is PV for powdered volume equals FV minus DV. All right, so let's solve that. Well, my final volume, you guys know from the label, is 35 milliliters. My diluent volume, you guys know from the label, is 24 milliliters because that's what you added. If you subtract the 2 together, you get what? 11 milliliters. That is the answer for number 1 practice problems. Practice problems A. All right. Let's try another one. We're going to do number 2, still on page 306, practice problems A, number 2. So for number 2, the drug, the label says tazamide, all right, injection. I'm going to pull out the number. So it says 500 milligrams. All right. Well, that 500 milligrams is identifying the total dosage or the weight of powder. This is how much the powder weighs, 500 milligrams. Well, if you read to the left of the label, it says it's for IM or IV usage. It says for IV solution, all right, dilute with at least 5 milliliters of sterile water for injection. For IM, which is intramuscular solution, add 1.5 milliliters of an approved diluent, okay? And it provides an approximate volume of 1.8 milliliters, which gives you 280 milligrams per milliliter. All right, so I'm going to pull out these numbers. Again, the question is, what is the powder volume for this medication? Well, I'm going to pull out this number. It tells us that it provides, so regardless if you add 5 milliliters of sterile water for injection for an IV solution or 1.5 milliliters of an approved diluent, it provides you with an approximate volume of 1.8 milliliters. So this 1.8 milliliters is going to be considered your final volume, which is FV. It tells you that 1.8 milliliters provides 280 milligrams per milliliter. What does that identify? Well, if you said that identifies your dosage strength, you are correct. Okay? And furthermore, it tells you that after reconstitution, you must store in the refrigerator and use within 7 days, and so on. All right. So the question that it is asking us is to find the powder volume. So what you're looking for is the powder volume. In order to solve that, you have to use the formula PV equals FV minus DV. All right. So as I'm solving that, you know that your final volume, you guys calculated that to be 1.8 milliliters. Your diluent volume, in this case, your diluent volume for number 2, it says, what is the powder volume for this medication given intramuscular? So the question is, what volume of diluent was given for an intramuscular solution? Well, it was 1.5. That was my diluent volume, 1.5 milliliters. If you subtract the two, your answer is 0.3 milliliters. That is your powder volume. Okay? So if I ask you what is the weight of the powder, that is basically asking you what's the total dosage that's in the container. If I ask you what is the powder volume, the powder volume is the volume of powder or powder displacement from the final volume and the diluent volume. That makes sense. If you keep in mind, I told you that the final volume consists of two components, your powdered volume and your diluent volume. If you subtract the diluent volume from your final volume, you will calculate the powdered volume of your medication. Now, another question I can ask you is this particular medication a single concentration or a multi-concentration medication? Well, how many dosage strengths or dosage concentrations did you read from the bottle? 1. So that means this is a single concentration medication. Okay, this is the end of lecture 3. I'll continue some more of these practice problems with lecture 4. Again, if you have any questions or any concerns, whatever the case may be, just send me an email and I'll respond to you as soon as I receive it. All right, you guys, look out for lecture 4 for chapter 9.